Thanks, Gali, for joining me. I've actually I've watched your channel, your content for quite a while. So before I even started making my own content, I was binging your Tesla content. So this is like a full circle moment for me in a lot of ways. So I do appreciate you joining me. Thank you very much. It's great to have
Yeah.
you. It's good to connect.
Yeah. Stoked to be here. Yeah, that's funny. A lot of the OG internet sort of investor
Mhm.
movement, I feel like got started with the Tesla community. So it's been really cool to watch it kind of blossom into all these other companies. Now, so
Absolutely.
I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, and
Honored
you've
to be
been
here.
Thank you. No, thanks for coming. You've been around in the Tesla space for quite a while. I had a look at your channel and I filtered it by the oldest video, and I could see that 7 years ago you were talking about Tesla publicly. So you've really seen quite a lot of the company, and you've been sharing it publicly for a number of years. So if we let's go right back to the beginning when you first started investing into Tesla. When was that? And do you remember what made you initially interested?
Totally. I think it was back in 2012 was when I first invested, and it was
Mhm,
really based on the bigger the problem, the bigger the opportunity,
mhm,
the massive opportunity to electrify and change, get us off fossil fuels and sort of
mhm.
electrify the fleet. I came across Tesla. They had this plan, and it was right at the time when Steve Jobs was kind of like that Apple magic of the
Yeah.
incredible founder, like kind of like exciting the culture. And I
Mhm,
feel like I got some of that energy with Elon Musk and like the Model S launch. And it was like,
mhm.
wow, like I feel like this is the start of this next multi-decade long Apple-esque story of one of the greatest
Yeah.
innovators of our time. And ever since then, it's like been even more exciting and delivered even more than I would have thought possible, you know?
Yeah, and there's definitely a lot of similarities between Elon, Steve, and some of the other big leaders as well. And I suppose I wasn't necessarily going to ask you this, but it's an interesting one. How much does the CEO or the leadership team actually influence whether or not you're going to invest into a company? Is that one of the main things that you look for?
That's actually, yeah, I love that because literally that is the number one thing I look for.
Yeah,
And my
me too.
mentor has a quote that's the biggest asset or liability that a company has
Mhm.
isn't on the balance sheet, it's in the boardroom. And
Yeah.
I love that quote. And I just think that is one of the most overlooked things. Wall Street is diving down into like
Yeah.
the spreadsheet and the numbers, and they never look and see who's actually
Mhm.
running the company. What are their motivations? What's their track record? What are they saying they
Yeah.
want to do? Are they on the conference call feeling lazy, or are they more hungry than ever? And there's so much insight there. So that's like one of the first things I look at for the company
Mhm.
is the leadership is everything. And so when you get someone young, motivated, smart,
Mhm.
understands business and engineering like Elon Musk, that's sort of why he is so incredible for value creation. Like he's the
Mhm.
engineer and the business mind. That is super
Yeah.
duper rare. So when you see someone like that, they're hungry, they're young, they own a huge chunk of stock, they have the
Mhm.
vision. Like those are kind of the horses I want to bet on in the market.
Yeah, and I suppose you're not going to be able to solve such large problems, and you're not going to be able to disrupt such traditional industries if you don't have someone like an Elon, like a Steve, like a someone else, like a Carp, actually pushing that forward, because it takes a certain person to say, hang on a minute, that's been done this way for so long, but we're actually going to completely change it up now. And then come all the skepticism, all comes the skepticism from, Wall Street, like you were saying. You get a lot of media saying that's not possible, this is not possible, that's, he's promised this timeline, it's not going to happen, all of this stuff. But actually, if you take a step back and look at the bigger picture, what he's doing isn't about just one product release. What Elon's doing isn't just about one area. He's building an entire ecosystem, literally changing many industries, not just one. So, yeah, it's very, very interesting thinking about the leader and not just the nitty gritty. But in terms of your investment journey with Tesla, has there been any points of time that you can remember that you've doubted your investment choice, or that you've maybe struggled with actually keeping your emotions out of it? Because Tesla's clearly a very, very volatile one. It's a very not everyone loves it, let's put it that way. Um, yeah, has there been any times that have been a bit difficult for you?
Totally. And it's like you always got to be questioning your thesis, right? And so
Absolutely. Uh-huh.
I feel like Tesla's been such a tricky company. There was so many times I could think of like the Solar City
Mhm.
acquisition. I panicked when that happened. 2018 when they kept missing their delivery targets. I
Mhm.
remember I had a meeting with David Einhorn, who was short the stock,
Okay.
and that was like the hardest moment of staying strong and long because it's like they keep missing production targets. Everyone says
Mhm.
Elon's crazy. They unveiled the Model Y. Is it just a poofed out Model 3 because they're super desperate? Like every single quarter or year, I feel like there's always been this pressure and narrative, and you're always kind of like just going back, convincing yourself, looking at the
Mhm.
fundamentals, staying with your conviction. But those are just a few of the times I could think of. There's been
Yeah.
a ton I can think of when I thought, I mean, most recently, it's like Elon getting super political. I think
Yeah.
if you're being honest with yourself as a Tesla shareholder, like no matter what you believe about politics, like that should have you reanalyze the thesis. Like
Mhm.
now our leadership and executive team is getting into politics. That's a new type of risk and exposure to geopolitical events and
Mhm.
regulations. And there's just a new ball game with that. And so you have to think about it and analyze and say, is Tesla stock still a hold with these things changing? And you're
Mhm.
kind of constantly doing that. So I feel like that's been the most recent case of it. I'm not sure if you've had any moments of doubting or what those moments were for you.
Mhm. Yeah, I think there's been definite moments of doubt for me, but I wasn't investing into Tesla during some of the times that you've just mentioned there. So I didn't have to try and stay strong when they were missing this and it was getting hard in this area of production. Like it wasn't so much that for me. I guess for my own journey, it's been more, is the unachievable achievable? It's that question constantly. Can they actually do what they're saying they're going to do? And like you said, you just have to break it down into pieces and actually think, is this problem actually solvable? Well, yes, it is. It is. It's just going to be very difficult. And okay, who's going to be able to solve it? Is it going to be some company that is wanting to be very traditional in terms of how they get decisions made, going through this, going through that? Or is it going to be someone like Elon driving Tesla who unapologetically will do things their own way? They will do things a fast way. They're not going to stand back and say, okay, well, this person needs to approve this decision before we do this. And then we need to go through this way because that's all the way it's always been done. So I guess it comes down for me just constantly reevaluating what they're doing at this current time and how that plays into the bigger picture. So, like recently, for example, we'll talk about the event, the We Robot event, but I'm sure you've seen it yourself. A lot of people were very unhappy with the outcome of that. And it's mainly come down to one, timelines, which is always a question with Tesla, isn't it? Always. Two, I've seen a lot of queries about Optimus, people not happy that they weren't running fully autonomously. And I think the third one that I've seen, and this is more from the media, is that it was just underwhelming. People were expecting more. Now, I understand how people arrive at all three of those conclusions, right? Especially the timeline, because that is an actual thing. There's been many times that a certain timeline has been promised and it's been missed. But my pushback on that, and I'm sure you would agree here, is that okay, yeah, the timeline might have been missed by 6 months, but has the thing been delivered? Yes. His track record of actually doing what he says he's going to do is so strong. So are we going to argue about 6 months or are we going to focus on what's actually been achieved? You know?
I mean, this has just been a playbook we've seen play out over and
Yeah,
over again.
exactly.
Elon does like the coolest event, just
Mhm.
throws a party talking about the future. You can go if you want, you can watch it.
Yeah.
It's optional. It's free and it's really cool and people love it. And then the haters come out with their
Mhm.
wow-wahs and they're like, "Wah,"
In
like,
full force.
this didn't it's like Tesla's telling you what they're gonna work on. They always come through with it. Like, I would say all 3 of those analyses are like zeros in my book. It's like you have
Yeah,
a
me
group
too.
of engineers working super
Mhm.
hard. They're telling you, giving you a sneak preview of what they're working on. They're saying it's gonna be available in a few years.
Mhm.
Every single time the media's like, "That's bullshit. The Cybertruck's never gonna come out. It's not even road legal, blah, blah." And now it's like the best-selling electric truck,
Yeah.
and it's crushing it. And so it's like,
Uh-huh.
I'm just so over seeing this play out. And I do think, um so I think everyone who's underwhelmed by the event, it's a bad take because I was like,
Mhm.
I had so much FOMO. I wish I were there. It looks super fun. It looks super
Me too.
cool. It's a take on the future. It's going to be awesome. But I think the other in between the lines thing is with the timelines and with everything, it makes a lot of sense with Tesla's commentary on the last conference call. They're using pieces of the Cybercab to come out with
Mhm.
either a cheaper Model 3 or Y or some sort of cheaper vehicle starting next year. And
Yeah.
that's still happening. And so reading in between the lines of this
Mhm.
event, that's what got me excited. It's like, okay, they're showing us what the form factor looks like for the autonomous future, but they're also saying we're really going to
Mhm.
start with the Model 3 and Y and trying to make those even cheaper using pieces of the robotaxi. But they don't want to
Mhm.
Osborne that. And so they're not talking about it. And so I think Tesla in the boardroom is like laughing so much right now Like, everyone
Yeah,
thinks it's a flop, everyone thinks we're late, and then we're gonna come out in, like, 3 months and drop all the
mhm,
prices of our cars and come out with something crazy, and sales are gonna go through the roof, and the stock's gonna boom. And so,
yeah,
that's kind of and then the whole Optimus thing, it's like, okay, so it's funny because the hate on Optimus is like,
mhm,
now it's like, well, they have people controlling it. Well, it's like, still they have that Optimus was doing all the things with its fingers. Yeah, it had a remote control input, but let's say you're a paraplegic with a Neuralink. All of a sudden, you
mhm,
can control a robot. You could have friends over to your house. You could control your robot to make them drinks. There's so many use cases
yeah,
that if I have my robot at my house, but I'm halfway across the world and I want to water my plants, I can Neuralink into my robot
mhm,
and just walk and do all my plants. Like, Tesla's saying they already have
yeah,
that technology. So even the criticism of people being like, well, Optimus was just copied and controlled in the back. I'm like, are you kidding me? They have a robot that's controlled that well by like a robotic, like
mhm,
walkie-talkie kind of video game device. That means this Optimus robot is already insanely useful
yeah,
before it even has the brain because we can plug it into the brain of a human. So gave me a new use case for Optimus that I wasn't even think of.
yeah,
That I
me
wasn't even
too.
thinking of. So it's like it's funny how that's the criticism when to me I'm like, oh my gosh, like this
Mhm,
is anyway. So that's kind of my take in between the lines is I think the things I really care about, which is like Optimus getting better and this
mhm.
cheaper kind of car coming out soon, I still think very on track.
Yeah, I agree with you there. That was the same thing that happened with me as well, and I guess that comes down to the difference between being an optimistic investor and not being an optimistic investor. But I thought the same thing. Like my thoughts on Optimus was very much that it was going to be one thing and take one market, and that was going to be what it did. And then everyone came out and said, well, it's being teleoperated, like it's not great, it's not there. But actually, that's a whole different market that could be used. And do you know what you said there that was really interesting? This idea of Elon's companies all fitting together. And I think to the boring company and the robo van, that's an interesting concept as well. And just the robo taxi in general. Like people are thinking just about Tesla, just about SpaceX, just about Neuralink, just about the boring company, all on their own. But actually, that's not what Elon's gonna do, is he? He's seeing a future that is gonna utilize different areas of all those businesses. And personally, I'm unfortunately not a SpaceX investor. I don't know if you are or you're not, but
I am a little bit, yeah.
you are. Okay. Lucky you.
Yeah.
Firstly,
Count
I
my
would
blessings.
love to. Yeah, love to. But how do you see his companies like fitting together in the future? And I'm not talking next year. I'm talking, you know,
Yeah.
10 years out.
So this is a good clue, and I love the Dave Lee theory of like, let's combine this into the X holding co and sort of
Mhm.
combine Elon's empire. They have so many synergies. I think it's
Yeah.
massively underappreciated, like the engineering crossover that happens into Tesla from SpaceX and
Mhm.
how it's like the smartest engineers in the world are working at Tesla because of that. But I
Yeah.
actually have a hot take on this whole theory, which is Elon doesn't have a master plan. There's not like some
Mm.
weird scheme to tie all his technologies
Okay.
together. He's just doing first principles innovation. And
Mhm.
in so many different areas that it begins to overlap. Like he's doing
Yeah.
first principles innovation on like the best way to disrupt the phone and have humans interact with a computer interface.
Mhm.
That's Neuralink. And then, there also happens to be autonomous transport. And obviously those intersect in the economy of I want autonomous transport. I'll think I want it on my Neuralink, call my Tesla car.
Mhm.
But it's not like he's building them to connect, if that makes sense. They're just connecting
They're
because
happening anyway. Mhm.
they're happening anyway and they're pushing every industry forward. So if you're pushing every industry forward, those
Yeah.
industries start to converge. And it's like these trends that are the backbone of change, the battery and like all these little widgets that
Mhm.
take power from the battery to control your robot. So they did that with the car. Now it's the human. So there's a lot of overlaps in those technologies. And because Elon's pushing on them,
Yeah.
I don't know. You see where I'm going with it?
Yeah, yeah. No, I didn't think of it that way, honestly. I always thought that he sees a bigger picture and all of these areas are leading him towards that. But either way, I guess it doesn't really matter. The point is he is building out a more interesting and more exciting future in some way or another in
Totally.
lots of different areas. Um, in terms of sticking on the investment side of it at the moment, have you ever been all in on Tesla?
Totally. I was all
Mm.
in on Tesla from like 12 to 2021 pretty much or
Oh
2020.
wow, okay.
And then well, I guess I've held a little bit of Bitcoin, but
Yeah,
Tesla and Bitcoin have been my biggest positions for like 12 years now or maybe Bitcoin 10 years. And I'm still pretty much those are my main positions, but
yeah.
that's like 60% of my portfolio still.
And would it be fair to say that the only reason that that's come down slightly is because you've seen other opportunities versus you're bringing them down because of risk?
Yeah, and I think it's the just maturation of a portfolio. It's like when you're super young and
Okay.
going all in on a stock, like I'm buying a
Yeah.
bunch of Tesla and then it grows and it's like, well, I don't really have conviction in Tesla 20xing immediately anymore because it just
Mhm.
did that. But I still like it as a long-term play. So I'm going to hold
Yeah.
this Tesla thing, but with my new capital, I'm going to add all these other growth things. And
Mhm.
I don't know. So it's like then I added Bitcoin. So I've just my portfolio percentage in Teslas like decreased from 100% to like 60% over time, but not because I've really sold any besides to buy
Mhm.
my Model Y, but just because I'm like adding new capital to new things. I'm not really adding it to Tesla, if that makes sense.
Yeah. That makes sense. We have a cat come to say hi.
Wow, that's awesome.
Um, what was I gonna say? He's put me off now. So,
I
for
love
you
cats.
yeah, I have a new kitten as well, so it's quite the party over here at the moment, let's just say that. They're not exactly getting on all the time, so it's a bit difficult to keep separating them and, oh, it's a nightmare, honestly. But anyway, so I'm guessing from what you've said then, you are against this idea that everyone must have a diversified portfolio from what you said. And has that always been your opinion, or is that something that you've got to over time?
Well, great question. I mean, science or whatever you want to call it, technology has cracked
Mhm,
the best diversified portfolio that always adjusts, and it's called the
mhm.
S&P 500.
Yeah,
So if you want diversification by that, I think everyone should do that. But if you
yeah,
actually want to generate alpha and outperform the markets, you should know that you're probably not going to do it and accept that you're probably going to lose. But if you want to
yeah.
do it, put all your money into one or a couple super high bets that you think are going
Mhm,
to do really well. And then as they outperform, then you diversify. And so, like
mhm.
one of my friends, Matt Joyce, like he's just a great investor and schemer. I've had him on the channel, but he has like a bunch of quotes about how diversification is kind of for wimps. And it's just
Yeah,
like, you don't believe in anything. Like Warren Buffett has a great quote that's like, "Oh, so you're going to put more money into your sixth best idea? Why don't you just
yeah.
put it in best idea?" So
Uh-huh.
I'm a big believer in that. And I frankly have outperformed because I went against all the norms and was like, I'm going to
Mhm,
put all my money in the riskiest things possible, Bitcoin and Tesla, because I'm super young and who cares? And that has crushed it for me. And I've just continued on that. But also, I'm old or I'm getting older and I want to diversify. So I'm like naturally diversifying a little bit. But I think when you're at the build wealth stage,
mhm.
I don't know. And even the way I run my portfolio now is with like 3, 4 companies that I really, really understand well.
Yeah.
So that's diversified for me. But so
Mhm.
it's like, yeah, I don't really believe in diversification. I guess short answer is.
Yeah, I'm the same now, but I wasn't to begin with. So when I first started getting interested in investing, I very much did the whole, learning as I could through Google, whatever. And you quickly realize that every single place tells you you must diversify, otherwise you're pretty much going to lose all your money. That's kind of what the mainstream idea is. And I think that works for a lot of people. But I think as soon as you start becoming very interested in investing or a particular company or those two things combined, naturally you start questioning, well, it doesn't really make sense for me to put it into an ETF or 17 different stocks when I actually like this one or these two way more. Like, that's kind of my journey. Like, I've just naturally got to that point. But I do still think that, playing devil's advocate here, for a lot of people, they're not gonna wanna sit and do what we do and actually find out everything that we can about a particular company. They are gonna wanna just know that they're doing their part to help their financial future. And I think in that case, you've kind of got to go down the diversification route. Otherwise, you pretty much are just throwing darts at a dartboard, aren't you, and hoping for the best.
Yeah, but when you diversify, I think it's super important to use the S&P 500 because
Yeah.
otherwise people will diversify with like products that their financial advisor tells them. And to
Mhm.
me, that's like
Yeah.
not diversifying correctly because you're putting it into this one thought bucket that's
Mhm.
probably dumb if it's not the S&P. Like the S&P is just mathematically such a perfect tool for
Mhm.
diversification and naturally dropping off the smallest companies and rising with the
Yeah.
big ones that I feel like that's the way to do it. And like what you said, it's like no one's going to be smart enough to understand 17 companies better than Wall
Yeah.
Street. At least I don't believe that. Maybe one or
Mhm.
two if you go insanely deep and spend all day
Yeah.
doing it and understanding them. So this idea that you have a normal job and you're managing your own portfolio of 20 stocks. None like if you haven't been listening to every single conference call and can name like the most five
Yeah.
important financials of your company, like I can name all the financials of all my biggest companies, like right now,
Mhm.
just off the top of my head, I know them. If you don't know
Mhm.
that, then you probably shouldn't own the stock. But like most people don't. So I think that is I don't know how to get over that like problem of like saying like if you don't want to put in hella research, then you probably shouldn't be picking stocks.
Yeah.
But I really don't think most people should be doing it, honestly.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. In terms of like how you actually go about literally investing, are you someone that is looking for the likes of Tesla and your other holdings to drop and then you buy? Or are you very much dollar cost averaging? Or what's your approach just in terms of for anyone listening that maybe interested in that?
Well, I mean, Warren Buffett's always a good place to start of like value
Mhm.
investing. Like
Mhm.
before you even look at the stock price, you should read the financial statements and determine a valuation for the business that you think is the fair value that you would buy
Mhm.
at. And then look at the market price. And if it's under it, you have conviction. If it's over it, it's too expensive. So that's like a really important way to frame it is like that mathematical model of that's the first thing I do when I look at every company is I'm like,
Mhm.
what do I think it's worth? And then I'll compare it to the market. How do I determine what it's worth? Well, how much money are they going to make? Like,
Yeah.
pretty much.
Mhm.
And I don't know. We can get more into that, but I guess that's like the first thing I'm trying to look at.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because for some people, I guess they would say, let's just take, I don't know, let's take Palantir just for an example. We'll talk more about Palantir later, but Palantir right now is pretty much at all-time highs, like fantastic, fantastic 1 year performance, year to date performance, incredible. So
Mhm.
for some people right now, it would be almost silly to add at this price for them. For me, even though that's happened, and I do understand that yes, maybe it is a little bit expensive right now, my personal time horizon is long enough for me to be okay with just adding and adding and adding and not necessarily adding all my cash at this point, but just little bits here and there, and then having some cash on the sidelines so that if I do see a dip, you know, God forbid, actually, I kind of want that to happen, I'll add more. So it's difficult to, I guess it all comes down to your situation, your goals, your risk, and your time horizon.
And what you just said is really interesting of like the stock's been up a lot, so that'll probably spook a lot of people, but like
Yeah.
I would say like that's irrelevant. Like who cares what it's
Hmm.
done or not done? Like you shouldn't let that kind of cloud your judgment
Yeah.
because then it's like, well, is it like I almost want to hear your pitch. Like Palantir's trading at 95 billion right now.
Mhm.
So what do you think it's worth?
A lot more than it is right now. Like my right now, right, so I first got into Palantir at the $6 and $7 range. So I'm very happy with that. I'm very thankful for that. However, I also have that part of my brain that's like, why didn't you put in more at that price? And I think that's a very common thing. And any emotion, I would say, in investing, it can be dangerous. So even that is not great. So that's something I'm trying to work on. Like, don't think what you could have done, think what you're going to do for the future.
Yeah,
And
totally.
I've learned a lot from Palantir actually as an investor because it's been quite different to Tesla in some ways. Tesla for me has very much been up and down, up and down. And that gives that, that's taught me a lot of lessons in different ways. Palantir has been very much so every single milestone has felt very uncomfortable because it got to $10. And I was thinking, oh, this is nice. I think based on all my research, like you just said, it's going to go higher. It's going to be worth a lot more, but maybe it's not going to happen as quickly as it did. And then we got to $15 and suddenly everyone is saying it's already done this amount, it's not going to go higher. Then we got to 17 and 20 and 25 and 30 and now, we're at all-time highs again and every step of the way has felt uncomfortable. But from what I'm seeing in Palantir is they are they are changing the way that it's being done. This is on the commercial side and on the government side. So they have these two business models. They work with the government clients, mainly defense and things like that. And then they work with the commercial clients, which is a business area that I think has grown quicker than a lot of people originally thought it would. You've got CARP, again, like we mentioned with Elon. He is someone that I think is the right person at the right time to drive this company. He's pushing the boundaries in a lot of ways. I think that they've had a problem for a very long time, which was their marketing and their sales problem. With AIP cons and AIP boot camps, that's quickly shifted. They've obviously recently, as you'll know, they were recently included in the S&P 500, which is not the be all end all by any means, but it's an important step for any company, and it does bring institutional money and institutional ownership in. They're the way that I see them now is that they're providing foundational software. So they're not just providing these products out of a box for companies. What they're allowing companies to do, whether again that's commercial or government, is actually to build upon their platforms to make something relevant to a particular industry. And that's a really interesting thing because that opens them up again to an even bigger total addressable market across so many industries. And it's when you start connecting those dots, what it was for me anyway, that I start thinking, okay, well, if they can execute and they have been, how big could this go? So, long story short, it's if I had to say whether I'm more bullish on Tesla or Palantir now, that's a very difficult question for me. I've got more Tesla, but I do think, thank you, I do think that um, Palantir could easily become my largest holding. It's all going to depend on how it plays out.
And just to push back a little, like when you think of numbers, like
Mhm.
like what price would you sell Palantir at?
So I would probably start to take some profit, maybe around the $100 range. Some profit, not all of it. God no. I'm gonna leave the majority of my shares in there for the next. Life can change, so this could easily change for me. But I'm very much looking 10 years plus. But I said I'm gonna take some profit at some point because I'm very aware that there could be another opportunity in which I maybe require some of that cash for. Now again, that could change. Sorry, go on.
Well, I guess I'm kind of pushing back on like more thinking about market cap and like what
Mhm,
numbers are backing up your analysis versus like
mhm,
the high level analysis. You know, it's like, all right, because I can give the bull take too, but I'm curious like what are the numbers
mhm.
that like justify, you know, 100 a share, I guess is like a 250 billion dollar valuation. So like I don't know. I'm kind of curious if there's like some numbers there because I'm looking at it and I'm like 2.5 billion in revenue for $100 billion
Mhm,
company seems crazy. But they're
mhm,
also making like 30% margin of that as cash flow directly. And I think my conspiracy theory is like everyone's talking about Palantir and how they're crushing it with retail consumers and the growth and stuff. But the real reason the stock is moving is 100% politics. It's
do you think
because
100%?
not 100%. I mean, they're crushing it, but the big reason why they're going to keep crushing it is because Peter Thiel, he's the big
Mhm.
Palantir guy, right?
Yeah,
Who's
yeah,
he
yeah.
also? A big Trump guy. Who's
Mhm,
also in the big VC Industrial Founders Fund Trump complex? JD Vance.
mhm.
This is the company that if Trump and Elon wins, which is looking like, or I guess Trump and Vance and Elon, whatever, which is increasingly likely,
Yeah.
like the Founders Fund is in with that government. Palantir is in with that new government and is going to
Mhm,
be locked into a massively expanded role. They're going to like I guess what I'm trying to say is like the Silicon Valley Illuminati mafia that started Palantir is also pushing for Trump, so it's more likely that Trump wins.
mhm,
Like that means that Palantir is going to get set up in a super good position and win all these government contracts and be let to expand in the private sector. And so I'm looking at Palantir saying this is a proxy for a certain part of the sort of defense Silicon Valley Illuminati complex that is gaining power by the day. And
mhm.
that's why the stock's sort of gaining power. So I don't know. It's a very interesting asset. The other thing about Palantir that I'm curious what your take on is like, so I'm big on Airbnb. They're around the same market cap,
Mhm. Yeah,
similar
we'll talk about
founder
them.
who's all in. Why do I like them? Because like I'm staying in an Airbnb right now. Like I love traveling. I love
Yeah.
exploring new cultures. Like I pay Airbnb hella money. I've been a customer for 10 years. Like Palantir is like they do software, they do big data. Like no one who's a shareholder is also a customer. And
Mhm.
so I just think that's like part of the Palantir story that I've kind of been like
I
it's
agree.
cool, but that's why I think I would be super
Yeah.
bullish on the company and buy the stock if I understood it, but it's hard for me to get
Yeah.
comfortable with that part of it. So I'm curious like
Mhm.
how you
Yeah,
kind
I
of got over
think
that, I guess.
no, I couldn't agree more with you on that one. I think that not only is it a confusing company in terms of like just technically it's confusing, right? And there's a lot to it to unpick, but also with Tesla, with Airbnb, with a lot of companies, with Apple, with Microsoft, whatever, it's tangible. You can literally try the products and the services. Palantir, I mean, you can do a little bit, but like you said, not everyone is out there being able to actually grasp this stuff, myself included. So I can't really give an argument as to why it, why that's okay with me. It just is. From all the research that I have done, I still see the potential, even though I haven't had personal hands-on keyboard at a company using Palantir. But I don't think that that would be enough to put me off. Although one day, I'd love the opportunity to actually go to an AIP con, maybe a boot camp, or whatever, and actually see that for myself. But for you, just I wanted to ask you this earlier in terms of Palantir. You've not got it at the moment, right? But you're interested. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think
Hmm.
that's exactly correct. I think it's a great business. I mean, they're like making huge
Hmm.
amounts of money. They have these contracts that once you're in there, it's going to be really hard to remove. So
Sticky,
I think
yeah.
it should be trading at a very high multiple, and and it has a lot of growth potential. So
Mhm.
I
So
think
is
it's
it
an
just
yeah.
sorry, go on.
Well, I think yeah. What you're getting at is just like I'm not the customer. Like I literally even in the
Mhm,
hyperchange book, it's like chapter 1 on investing, be the customer. So it's like I'm literally that old school where it's like
mhm,
I try to be the customer and understand it. Honestly, I think I can understand it enough to get comfortable with it because I'm like, who's really their customer? The government. If
mhm,
people on the government are in their side, they're going to get way more contracts. They're way smarter than the typical vendors who are selling into the government. They're going to do that in the private sector too, replace these dumb ERP systems. I'm not passionate about that change. Like that's not exciting to
mhm,
me. Like there's only so many things you can work on in the day. Like as much as I love it from a financial perspective,
mhm.
like it's not fun. Like I think it'd be way more fun if we were like we're all going to live on Airbnb, like we're traveling, we're opening up the world, like there's less
Yeah.
war, there's more peace because people connect from different cultures and
Uh-huh.
like we're getting way more usage out of real estate which decreases the emissions of that sector. And like now we're chilling with Brian Chesky in mansions
Mhm,
doing videos talking about Airbnb stock. And that seems way more fun than being like, "Ooh, we're fired up on like this healthcare company using AI to reduce costs." Like
yeah,
we won't
I
talk
think
about the 50% of the business that's helping
uh-huh,
drones get more efficient at killing people. So, you know what I
uh-huh,
mean? It's like I've been I like I don't know. I see a lot of startups. I see how this plays out. Like invest in things that are fun that you want to be a
mhm,
part of. Palantir's fun because it's making a fuckload of money.
mhm,
That's the only reason it's fun. But it's not like I'm just not inspired by it, I guess. But maybe it's because I don't understand it. But that's why, like,
mhm,
to me, like Tesla, like, inspired me, and that's why I got involved. Like, Airbnb inspires me and has changed the way I travel and
mhm.
live, and that inspires me to get involved. Like,
Yeah.
like Lightship, one of my favorite investments that's like electric RVs. Like, I want to
Mhm,
enjoy nature electrically, so I want to get involved. Like, and I think that's why I push back on the Palantir community of like, I love the enthusiasm. I love the retail movement. I love that management stepping in. I love the limited edition merch. I love that we found this before Wall Street. I love that. I
yeah.
love all that. But like now it's time to take that enthusiasm to companies that to other companies
Uh-huh.
that we can
So
get even more enthusiastic about.
yeah, I completely see where you're coming from, especially given that it's not as tangible for everyone. I do think it's very interesting though, and obviously that's just a personal thing. I would ask you in
Totally.
terms of if we just move away from the government side quickly and just think about the commercial side, one thing that I know what you're saying there, where you say like we've reduced our costs on the healthcare side by AI, blah blah blah. How exciting can that be compared to a Tesla? I do agree. However, I also am able to make that connection in my brain when I think about, and I'm going back to basics here, right? When I think about companies that I've worked with in the past and just how unuseful and ineffective their data is. So, not even considering AI here, just thinking about how their data is so spread across many different areas of the business and how annoying that is for me as a very low tier employee, let alone how incredibly ineffective it is at the very top of that business chain. And then you have someone like Palantir that can come and bring all that data together. And suddenly you've not only got the data in one source of truth, you've also got data that then you can take actionable actions with, right? You don't have to then look at this, because for me, I had a literal experience where I needed to use um, a legacy system basically to find a piece of data. To do that, Gali, it was honestly a headache and a half. Not only did I have to go and find someone on the other side of the office that was the one person that had access to this legacy system, once I got in, it was a whole literal like 2 days learning how to use it just to find this one piece of data. Imagine at a bigger scale how useful that is if you have a Palantir whereby those problems are no longer problems. And then you can actually use that data to do better things. So when I'm thinking about Palantir from the commercial side, I can sometimes go back to that idea and just think, forget AI, forget everything else. Just bringing the data together, honestly, is quite a good use case.
Okay, and this is a great crux of like the thing. So I'm like, yes, I agree with everything
Hmm.
you're saying, but how do we know Palantir is the best at organizing your
Hmm.
data for the best price? We have to be the customer. Right now,
Hmm.
they're winning hella accounts like that, but I don't have the confidence to. And the way we know that is because we're looking
Hmm.
historically at the quarterly reports. I want to have insight into those decision makers who are saying
Hmm.
we could use Palantir or there's this other startup. Why are we going with
Yeah.
Palantir? There's
Yeah.
hundreds of those deals happening every quarter. Who do we know
Hmm.
that keeps going with Palantir? But I
Hmm.
need to have a forward leading indicator into that. Otherwise, I'm just looking at the quarterly reports like everyone else, being
Yeah.
like, oh, we finally did good. Oh, we finally did bad. I'm just,
Hmm.
that's not an edge. That's not like enough for me. So that you hit the crux of like, yes, I'm so bullish on all these massively inefficient data systems
Hmm.
and the ability to organize that data, providing massive insights without AI. And then you could layer on top of AI,
Yeah.
then you're the stickiest brain inside every corporation. You're $1 trillion company. I believe it. But
Right.
if I'm being intellectually honest with myself, I cannot have a strong analysis on Palantir's competitive positioning in their market because I just
Okay.
don't know it. Like I don't
Hmm.
know if there's going to be another startup. Like my friend who works at a big tech company, he's just
Hmm.
talking about Glean, which is a
Hmm.
startup that's AI that comes in that connects all your systems. You can ask it anything, and it's the AI that collects and analyzes and stores your data. So
Hmm.
the, betting on Palantir now with this valuation is a bet that in perpetuity they will be the behemoth and dominant in the space, which
Yeah.
I think they might be, but
Hmm.
I just don't have the conviction that they will continue to like dominate because I'm just too far away from the decision maker
Hmm.
who's going to buy their software. So
Yeah.
like you got to play where you have an edge. Like I listen to the
Hmm.
Airbnb conference call and I'm like, it's a pain. You can't even try to listen to the Airbnb conference call. You have to sign up on an account. It's like you have to confirm your email. It's like 10 minutes of using the shittiest software just to listen to what should be a free
Really? Okay.
conference call.
Yeah.
So and then on the conference call, it's all these big wig schmucks who like don't even like Airbnb. You could tell that they're staying in hotels instead. It's like it's exactly like Tesla 7 years ago. Like all the analysts don't drive
Mm.
electric cars. They don't even drive. Their heads are in the sand. And like I'm on the ground using Airbnb. Like I just gave up my 12-month lease. I don't even have a new lease. I'm living on Airbnb. They're not competing with
Wow. Okay.
hotels. They're competing with apartments, which is 20 times
Uh-huh.
bigger. And you listen to Brian Chesky on the conference call, and he's like, we did 80 billion in short-term rentals. That's bigger than Amazon and books, and we're just
Mhm.
getting started. Like, get ready. I'm 42 and I'm all in. And I have a tiered comp package where I'm getting equity until 500 a
Mhm.
share. So that's when I get excited. Like Palantir expectations are here. Airbnb
Mhm.
they're here. And I know that those expectations are wrong because I'm living it as the customer every single day. Like I just
Yeah.
paid Airbnb 6 grand for a massive lease to live in and I fucking love it. No
Mhm.
other company have I paid 6 grand this year. So and I'm going to keep paying Airbnb and I love paying them.
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
think so it's like that kind of like
Yeah.
contrarian mindset of like, what do you believe that no one else believes? I believe that
Mhm.
Airbnb is not done growing. And I believe that they're going to do long-term rentals, not just short-term. And
Mhm.
that's going to make them $1 trillion company. So it's all about that delta and the belief
Mhm.
of the market versus your belief. With Palantir, I worry there's not enough of a delta. At $6 a share, you had an insane delta. The market's pricing in no growth, commercial's not going to work,
Mhm.
government contracts are going to peter out, blah, blah, blah. Guess what? Commercial's taking off. Government's not going anywhere. Growth is picking
Mhm.
up, the stock soars. So, but now I worry those expectations are so high. How do we get even higher expectations than where they are now? I don't know. But
Yeah.
I do think Palantir is going to make it. I just think it's a little bit pricey now, but like my true
Mhm.
opinion is like great long-term investment. I think
Yeah.
you'll get your 100 a share. It might take a while, but yeah.
Mhm. So what do you think about um, the AIP con days where we get direct insight into what the customers are saying that are using the software? Do you like them? Have you?
Yeah, yeah, I think that's dope, but that's also what
Mhm.
Palantir's saying. That's not what they're saying. Like, it's just like a company event. I think like Yeah, that's great. I personally don't know, and I think that's great research, but I think it's
Mhm,
more about, like, they're not telling you which companies didn't go with Palantir. Like, you're hearing the
mhm,
Palantir side of the story there. So
mhm,
I think that's, like, a big piece of the due diligence is understanding AI con, and then when they
mhm,
tell you, like, this customer's crushing it, like, go to that hospital. Like, figure out, are they
mhm.
actually crushing it? Like, who's their number 1 contract with that they're hyping up? Is that person gonna buy a bunch more software? Like, I don't know. I don't know, but I haven't watched the AI con day. But I think,
Yeah,
yeah, to your point, like, that's as close as you can get. That's what you should be doing to try and
mhm.
understand.
So what would have to obviously, you've said you like Palantir and you do see it as a long-term option, but right now, let's just say within the next 12 to 24 months, what would you have to see for you to say, "Do you know what? This is worth some of my money. This is worth a 5, 10% of my portfolio," whatever it would be?
I mean,
Sorry, I don't mean to put
hon
you on the spot.
yeah, it's just like, I'm, like, really picky and, like, I only
That's good
wanna
though.
invest in, like, Tesla and Airbnb, but if I would like, look, if the stock goes to $10 a share, but
You're
they've
going in.
continued to grow, and Alex Karp is, like, screaming on the conference call about how they're helping some big national security initiative, like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna get interested.
Okay.
Um, but yeah,
But right now,
it's just the fun score is low.
the fun score is low.
I've had so many years of investing in big data companies like Attunity, Data Watch. You could read my Seeking Alpha
Yeah.
articles. Like, I've invested in so many enterprise software companies, reading their quarterly reports, like, trying to analyze it
Mhm.
and just being like, "You know what? Life's too short for me to, like, analyze the quarterly report of a B2B software company. I do
You're
not
funny.
give
I
a
like that.
flying fuck." Like, I just don't care. Like, I'm
Yeah.
never gonna care. Even if it's gonna make all the money in the world. It's like, I'd way
Mhm.
rather, like, I don't know. It's just so I feel like it's like you
Yeah.
gotta follow your passion, and
Mhm.
that's where you're gonna be a great investor. Like, if you're like,
100%.
"I wanna nerd out about Palantir," and, I'm nerding out these AI con things, and these are, like, fascinating, and I've been there, then, like, you're probably gonna crush it and make a bunch of money because not many people are
Uh-huh.
gonna nerd out like that and follow your passion. So I think it's like, I kinda try and stay true to that of, like, look,
Yeah.
like, Airbnb is just where I found myself right now in terms of
Mhm.
I've been following the company for years. I love the product and the stock's in the gutter and everyone hates it. And this is like a once in a 20-year moment for me to be like, I'm firing my shot. I'm buying it
Mhm.
because I've been like
Let
waiting at the sidelines, studying for 10 years. And now I'm like,
uh-huh.
this is it, So
Let's talk about Airbnb actually, because it's a really interesting one. So I've noticed that recently there's been a few people within, I want to say maybe the X investor community that have started talking more about Airbnb as an investment opportunity, which is interesting because these are people, yourself included, that I respect, right? And I've seen you do great things on other companies. So when I hear people say, okay, Airbnb is very interesting right now, it's got a great future, this, and this. I haven't done any research into Airbnb as an investment opportunity. Like, I'll be honest with you, my information on Airbnb is purely as a consumer. But the
okay.
more I'm hearing, the more I'm seeing, it is getting interesting to me. Maybe I should take a bigger look at it. But let's start with the very basics. Like, what if you just had to say maybe like 4 or 5 things about Airbnb that are interested to you right now as an investment opportunity? What would those be?
Stock and valuation near all-time lows,
Okay.
cash flow, trailing 12-month cash flow at all-time
Hmm.
highs,
Hmm.
4.3 billion,
Hmm.
11.2 billion in cash on the balance sheet, zero debt. And like I
Nice.
said, making 4.5 billion in
Mhm.
profit per year. Literally, their biggest problem right now is money, billions and billions are piling up. Their stock is
Okay.
so cheap, they're buying it back. They bought
Bad problem.
749. Yeah, so everyone's like, Airbnb is struggling right now. I'm like, I'm like, you make $4.3 billion in a year and tell me you're struggling, like,
I'll
in
give it
profit,
a go.
you know? And
Yeah.
so they repurchased 749 million worth of stock
Mhm.
last quarter. They still have 5.25 billion authorized on the share repurchase program. So
Okay.
it basically Airbnb stock sitting here, they're just the Airbnb, that's 90 days divided by 700 million. We're talking about like 8 million a day last quarter in that
Mm,
trading
mhm.
day. Brian Chesky is buying back like 5 to 10 million dollars worth of stock with his own profits every single day. Talk about supply and demand in
Interesting.
the market.
Yeah.
Like, we've never seen a company this early in its growth long term buy back stock
Mhm.
this aggressively. And my read on that is Brian, like, you listen to Brian Chesky right now, he's pissed. Like, he's founder mode. He's like, we are crushing it. We're doing better than ever. And everyone thinks we're sucking. Like, I'm pissed. Like,
Mhm.
I'm buying back my own stock because nobody gets that this stock is about to 10x. Like, so
Right, okay.
he's putting his money where his mouth is. And I think this perception right now in the market is regulations hampering Airbnb. So growth
Mhm.
is going to stop. And I just have the total opposite opinion of like Airbnb has had very big waves. Long term, they've gone like this to 80 billion
Yeah.
worth of short-term rentals, but there's been huge waves. COVID,
Mhm.
bam, they had to fire half
Yeah.
the company and get super profitable. That was really good for them. So
Mhm.
my long story short here is you have a company that's trading at $80 billion with 4.3 billion in trailing profits. That's a
Mhm.
7.5% yield on profits for every dollar I buy the stock and growing. Tesla, that's more free cash flow than Tesla has, and they're worth 800 billion.
Mhm.
They have more, they have double what Palantir has in revenue in cash flow, and they're
Yeah.
worth less than Palantir. So they're trading at half the PE of Marriott Bonvoy, who's got all the liabilities and has to deal with all these hotels. Airbnb doesn't own a single asset. They just
Yeah.
make profit. They're the best
Mhm.
thing to own in real estate. So my whole thing is the market is going to, what's going to happen? October product release. Brian Chesky's going to announce the co-host marketplace, making it way easier to put properties on Airbnb,
Mhm.
expand supply. They're going to start growing into long-term leases. Wall Street's going to
Mhm.
realize growth story's not done. He's also going to say we bought back over $1 billion worth of stock, more than 1% of our whole company this quarter, and we're going to
Mhm.
keep buying it back. And I just think the market's gonna be like, holy shit, like why did we like think Airbnb was dying? They're just getting started. And the stock's gonna get re-rated and it's gonna go and it's gonna be a home run. And I think for my whole generation, it'll be one of the best buy and hold companies to own. I'm sick of watching Costco, Starbucks, Netflix, Lululemon, Amazon, Tesla. I mean, I did Tesla and it was the best company I ever did. And it's like,
Mhm.
and I'm tired of like overthinking it, and I think everyone's overthinking it. Palantir, it's
Mhm.
like, look at what company, all the companies who you love, whose products and services you use every day are the best investments. You have
Mhm.
the insight to them because you're the customer. And it's like, yeah. So I don't know. I don't know what part of the thesis is most compelling to you, but I think there's a lot of things of like amazing time to buy.
Mhm.
Expectations are zero. I see huge potential. And then you got the founder, that X factor of the founder who
Yeah.
is all in.
Let's talk about, so I think I listen to, I get through a lot of podcasts. So I believe I listened to, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Brian on Diary of a CEO. I think he did that, if I'm not going crazy.
Okay.
Now, other than that, I don't know an awful lot about him. So in a few like words, what are you liking about him? Because obviously a leader is very important to you as it is to me.
First of all, this guy still puts his house on Airbnb and like bakes cookies for people. He
Okay.
was the first person to host someone on Airbnb. He was a
Uh-huh.
designer from RISD. So that's why Airbnb
Mhm.
looks beautiful because he's a designer. He's 42 years
Okay.
old. He's in insanely good shape. He power lifts, which I know doesn't seem like it matters, but
Uh-huh. I
successful
know where
people
you're
are
going.
successful
Yeah.
in every angle of their life. Like this
Mhm.
guy, he's like he's done the impossible. Like
Mhm.
getting people to stay in people's homes is impossible. Like I have so many experiences like traveling to Croatia, and it was the first time I ever used Airbnb. I went to Croatia. I met this local lady. Was staying like the cutest apartment, and like this, we had our host tell us where to go. It was like literally,
Yeah, I've
I've
had that.
never traveled like that
Yeah.
in my whole life. It totally changed my experience, and I have 27 reviews on my Airbnb profile.
Mhm.
I've used it forever. It's like I just feel like he's done the impossible, and he's one of the founders that I just respect. Like, done one of the hardest things, built one of the most profitable, successful companies. That's the
Mhm.
coolest to work at, that everyone loves, that has created priceless experiences for millions and millions of people. And what is he telling me now? He's just getting started. He's got
Yeah,
way more to go. He's more committed than ever. His equity package is aligned with long-term
I like
shareholders.
that. Mhm.
Um, and he's like we need to be releasing products every year, so they do
Yeah.
twice a year. They do the winter release and the summer release, which is like new product features. So that's what
Mhm.
they're about to do in October, and I think that's going to move the stock. But he's just like we started talking about this podcast, all about leadership. Like I'm putting
Mhm.
Brian Chesky in this bucket of like Elon Musk, Brian Armstrong, the Coinbase guy, love him.
Mhm.
Alex Karp, your Palantir
Mhm.
guy, owner, operator, founder, all in, just
Yeah.
going, and Brian Chesky. um
Can I ask you some maybe silly questions that are just coming to my mind that I think
yeah.
the listeners will also find useful? And to you, these will be very silly because you know this company. But I remember hearing, I don't know if this is still the problem, but as a consumer, I remember hearing a lot about how bad the cleaning fees are getting, and that was putting a lot of people off. So that's one of my questions. What's going on with that? Where does that sit with you? The next question would be, are Airbnb integrating AI? If so, how? And thirdly, because I can't do this because I just don't know enough, can you please play devil's advocate and let me know what the risks are.
Okay, so awesome. I'm writing these down because I want to get to them all. Cleaning fees, I think, way overdone. I would put that in the wham
Okay.
wham category of people just complaining. It's like, look at the data. Why
Okay.
is most nights booked ever, most profit ever,
Mhm.
most revenue ever? Because people love Airbnb and love using
Mhm.
it. The cleaning service fees aren't turning them away. That's just
Okay.
people whining. And the biggest thing Airbnb did is they said, listen, you don't want us to hide cleaning fees. They added the biggest button that showed all in cost of the trip, including
Okay.
fees.
Uh-huh.
They changed it because people were complaining. I love that
Right.
feature. They've fixed it and moved on. If you're going to rent out your apartment to a stranger, don't you think they should pay to clean it too? Like,
Uh-huh.
I don't know. It's just like, I just think that's a big thing. It's like, look at the numbers. If that was actually pissing people off and turning them away, then we wouldn't have
You
growth.
would
We wouldn't have
expect, yeah.
like that would actually be hurting the numbers, but it's not. It's all a perception. So that's why I'm buying,
Okay.
because all these claims are like feelings. None of them are based like numbers.
Yeah, I
AI.
get you.
When I think about the Airbnb is already the world's best, maybe not AI, but like data play, just like Palantir.
Okay.
I
Mhm.
search into Airbnb. I want to go here these dates, or I'm even flexible. You tell me where to go. Is that a
Yeah.
human who's like scrambling through the papers to
I
tell me where
hope
to
not.
go? No, they have an insanely sophisticated algorithm that is
Yeah.
telling me exactly where I want to go and when, and they're making it even easier for me to book. And it's only been getting easier and easier because now they have, well, you can do your, plus or minus a day. Are you flexible? Are
Yeah.
you not? What's your budget? Where do you want to
Mhm.
go? What kind of features? Like, they have all that. So they constantly innovate to sort of expand these things. And I think as they increase supply, Airbnb already has the network effect, and they're just going
Mhm.
to continue layering on more smart features to become your travel concierge.
Mhm.
You're going to be like, gosh, I have a week off in February. Like, pitch me vacations. Why do I need to stay
Mhm.
up for 10 days researching vacations? The AI is going to pitch me 1 minute videos of, look at this place we could stay, look at that place we
Uh-huh.
could stay. And then, so when I think about where this is all going, I think Airbnb is building the world's biggest databases of places to stay that are bookable in
Mhm.
the world, and AI is just going to get way more efficient at matching people where they want to stay. So as long
Mhm.
as Airbnb keeps building supply and demand, their advantage for this AI sort of big data era continues to expand. So I love that you
Mhm.
brought that up, because I'm like, who's in a better position for AI to come into real estate than Airbnb? Who's got more
Yeah.
data than Airbnb
And
on
they're a
where people want to
company that
go?
I see them as, from the little that I know, I see them as a company that would welcome that change and that shift and would want to innovate and integrate something like artificial intelligence. Whereas when I'm looking, again, just off the top of my head, when I'm thinking about the quote unquote competitors of Airbnb, and I would push back and actually say that there isn't really any, you're looking at your very traditional companies, maybe booking.com maybe is one of the big ones. They don't seem as ready to move as Airbnb do.
You just said something so important, which is they're a monopoly. They don't have competition. Like,
Mm,
0 to 1,
mhm.
he talks about
Yeah.
all the best businesses are monopolies. Google's a monopoly. You're right. Airbnb is a monopoly. No one else
Mhm.
has this network of homes, and like those businesses deserve massive premiums.
And
So
it would be
that's
really hard. It would be really hard for a different company right now to come in and disrupt that.
exactly. So when you think about hardest things to disrupt, those should have the highest valuations. Once
Mhm.
Palantir software is in there, it's not getting out. We're not even
Mhm.
in there in a company. We're in there in the world of that's what
Mhm.
Airbnb is with its software. So that's like getting me back to my thesis of like Airbnb trades at a massive discount. Well, when you really think about what this asset is as a monopoly on the impending AI wave to take over real
Mhm.
estate supply and demand, it should be at a massive premium.
Mhm. Yeah, and what about the final question, which was asking you to basically play devil's advocate for me here because I don't know enough about Airbnb, and just maybe discuss some of the risks that you actually do think people should think about.
Easily. Okay. Devil's advocate hat on. Airbnb ruins it for the locals. It makes it too expensive. It's super noisy. It prices out people. It's accelerating gentrification. Um, every single government's trying to ban them. New York just stopped short-term stays. Europe is trying to kick them out.
Mhm. Are any of them problems for you personally?
I think it's
Not enough
all,
to put you off, but
yeah, exactly. Not enough to put me off. And I think it's like those are all the reasons I'm buying, because
mhm,
people have like priced these in, and I think they're all
yeah,
bullshit. So I'm like,
mhm.
you're kind of right. But
There's a
like,
point there, but it just doesn't put you off enough. You're seeing the opportunity for the
exactly. I'm
overcoming of
I'm
those. Yeah.
buying their point. I'm saying, okay, New York banned Airbnb, but guess what? New York's biggest problem right now is a housing shortage. every single
Mm,
biggest city
yeah,
is a housing shortage. So Airbnb just filed it with the judge, and they're like, "You guys are literally going on TV saying your biggest problem is you don't have places to house people, and then you're banning Airbnb because the hotel lobby
yeah.
told you to." So they might even get that reversed. Second of all,
Mm,
Airbnb's I'm in a 30-day plus stay in New York right now. So they've actually they accelerated their transition to long-term stays, and I'm spending
okay.
more money on Airbnb ever in New York despite
Mhm,
that ban. And so I think what's going to happen is all these you get these headline news of like this place is banning Airbnb. The reality is the governments can't ban Airbnb. It's too powerful. But I think that
mhm.
is the biggest risk is essentially government overreach
Okay.
to impend on the free market. And I think a lot of like the partying and the people hating on Airbnb, like that was sort of growing pains. And I think the Airbnb party fair era is over. Like all my friends who partied on Airbnbs got horrible reviews and got kicked out. The platform's working perfectly. I have
Right,
27
okay.
reviews that are perfect. You think I'm hosting a party to fuck up the
Yeah.
Airbnb and ruin my rating? Not a chance.
No.
Everyone wants to have me as a host. I'm super. You barely need to pay your cleaner after you host me because I'm so
Uh-huh.
clean because I want a good review. Like
Yeah.
it's gonna work. And so I think and the other problem is like I'm trying to think of risk, but it's like okay, well, if we were having to wait for them to make money, that would be a risk, but they're making
Mhm,
hella money already. They have no debt that's coming
mhm.
due. They're just buying back 5 to 10 million worth of their own shares per day at this price. So I don't there's a huge buyer in the market, so I don't
Mhm.
see a big seller to push the stock down. So I already think the stock is dirt cheap. It's hard for me to see it getting even cheaper. So
Yeah, let
so
me look at the stock.
so those would be but I guess the risk is that more regulation I think is the
Mhm.
biggest risk. And maybe Airbnb is too big because I think it's already so big that like that's why it's having trouble growing because it literally has like 250 million nights
Yeah.
booked in the first 6 months this year. It's like 3% of the world's living on Airbnb already. Like how much bigger
Mhm.
can we get? Like
Yeah. I'm just looking at the stock on, Airbnb stock, and you're right, it's been pretty brutal. It's not really done anything well, it's not really done anything, I guess, is the bottom line there. So you're saying that it's just a no-brainer at this current price, and I guess my question would be for you, at what price are you seeing that it would be not a no-brainer anymore? If you know what I mean? Like, what prices are you looking at for this one in
I think
different
it
time
looks
periods?
totally. I think it looks super cheap under 200.
Okay.
Like I think under 200
Mhm.
is where I think it looks cheap in the like for the next year or so and then it depends. We'll see how they do. But in the long run, I can see Airbnb becoming like 3, 4, then $500 stock. But
Mhm.
kind of
Okay.
like it's not like it's very big and it's I think there's a re-rating that happens where you have a lot of
Mhm.
upside now, but then in the long term, it's like a slow growth, chug along it's a blue chip. It's the blue chip of our generation. This is to me, this is buying Meta in 2018 after the stock
Interesting.
IPO'd and then crumbled. We had Zucks. Everyone was hating on it, but still using it. Zuck was still all in. They had
Yeah.
their figure out how to work as a public company. They started buying back stock, and then you've seen what happened. They exploded
Mhm.
to 500 a share. I think it's going to be the exact same thing, but it's not financial advice. I'm not
Of
putting out
course.
financial advice for sure, but like I my gut instinct has me staying up till 5 AM listening to their conference call, being like, if I'll
Mhm.
be damned if this thing is not going up because I can just like feel it in me. Like this is mispricing.
Yeah.
Wall Street's gonna wake up to this long-term stay thesis. If Brian Chesky's smart, I'm emailing IR constantly. They're gonna get back in touch with me, change their conference calls so it's easy to
Mhm.
access. We're gonna launch the Airbnb retail shareholder movement. It's gonna catch fire on the internet, and we're gonna actually change like
Mhm.
the shareholders of Airbnb from all these dumbass institutions to the customers using it. And it's going to be
Mhm.
a revolution. And I think when that revolution happens, the stock doubles and then we're back at fair
Yeah.
value.
Mhm.
And so that's like what I'm manifesting here because
Yeah.
I'm the first shareholder who's like, who else uses Airbnb and loves it and is a shareholder? Let's stick together because
Yeah.
this is awesome and we should be sticking together. Screw all these whiners on the internet. Why don't we all get rich buying Airbnb stock? Isn't that more fun than whining about the cleaning fees?
It is, absolutely. Well, I'll take another look into it. Well, not that I've really taken a deep look anyway, but you've definitely made me interested. So expect maybe some more questions from me when I start digging in and thinking, "Oh, I don't know about that," or "This is interesting. What are your thoughts?" I definitely reach out to you because, yeah, you've clearly done a lot on, Airbnb. What's your what's your current split between, like, Tesla and Airbnb? And if we forget Bitcoin,
Maybe like
roughly.
uh 10%,
Okay.
like 10% of my maybe 10 to 15% of my Tesla position is Airbnb now, in a
Mhm.
mix of stock and options.
Yes, actually, let's talk about the options thing.
Uh-oh.
See, no, 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 no. Uh-oh. I For people listening or watching, Gali made a video on his channel that you should go and watch, and everything will be linked below. And in that video, you were speaking about Airbnb, and one thing that you were mentioning is options. So, do you want to just quickly just explain what you're doing and why?
Yeah, like once every 2 or 3 years, I get a deep calling to buy options because I feel like the
Okay.
markets are so wrong, and I feel like I have
Uh-huh.
to act on it and buy some long-term calls. So, my theory with Airbnb is I looked at the implied volatility and it's super
Hmm.
low.
Hmm.
So, basically I bought the January 2026 calls, I believe.
Hmm.
So like I'm not trying to do short-term options. It's like
Yeah.
15 months over a year. And for $5, so my break even is $205 per share, but
Okay.
above that, I get like leveraged upside. So
Hmm.
my plan right now, and I just think that, and like part of me is like, I don't want to talk about this publicly because I don't want people to start trading options. I think it's a bad like example to set,
Yeah.
but I also am just gonna like transparently say what I do because that's my motto. So
Hmm.
but I think it's a double black diamond move to, like, buy options, cash out of the options, and then roll that into the stock. So,
Hmm.
basically, instead of just buying the stock and going up, I'm gonna buy the options, have those go
Yeah.
up more, and then when I buy the stock, get even more shares or
Hmm.
figure out what I wanna do with it. But that's how I wanted to play it because I just felt like this is an insanely unique position, and I've done options trades in the past in my G2 Amelia account before, and I sold out, but then it ended up working. So then part of me was like, "Damn, maybe I should see this one through." So, but I hate to. I'm really like not a fan of options, and I think like my
Yeah.
whole analysis is more just like I love the stock and the company, and I own like
Uh-huh.
5 times as much shares as I do options. So
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. For me, I've never really got into options, if I'm honest with you. It's always been something that I'm a little bit
stay
more
that
like,
way.
yeah,
I
I
I wish I never got into it. I mean, people are gonna do what they do, but I'm like, if I could go back and tell old Gali to like, I wish they were never invented. It's not they're not doing anybody good.
interesting. But yet you want them yourself.
But yet it's they do exist, and I'm
So you're
crunching the
gonna,
numbers, and I'm like, I can't not buy it.
yeah, that makes sense.
I don't
So
know. I'll probably regret it. So you know,
publicly saying it here first.
yeah.
No, you've been transparent. I think and this isn't financial advice, of course, anything we say here, but being transparent, I think, goes a long way with people. And ultimately, you're out there trying to make money in the stock market like everyone else, and everyone just needs to make their own judgment call on where to park your money and how to park your money in order to get the best returns. And that's what you can really do, isn't it? Um, for someone interested, like myself, this is again a very selfish question. For someone that's interested in finding out more about Airbnb as a potential investment opportunity, where should I start? Like, what's the best way to go about this from this company?
Well, I just sent in the chat Main Street Data
Oh,
slash
have you? Okay.
Airbnb, which is one of a website that I'm an advisor to that does great financial charts. So I
Okay.
that's where I always start researching a company's fundamentals because
Okay.
it's easy to visualize the cash flow, the share count,
Mhm.
the revenue, the profit. Um, I've been listening to every Airbnb. I think the smartest move you can do is just go to the Airbnb investor relations
Yeah.
website. They have a great shareholder letter, which is easy to
Hmm.
get, and then the conference call. Listen, if you can figure out how to log in and access the most recent conference call,
Yeah.
like like Brian Chesky sounds like an angel from the real estate heavens who's descended from above every time he talks. He is
Hmm.
so like 50 moves ahead of everyone in that conference call that it is like, that's that's when Brian Chesky's speaking directly to his Airbnb shareholders. So that's,
Hmm.
like, what I like to listen to,
Yeah.
and my pulse of, like, founders, so much of conference calls, like what we're talking about, like, the leadership. So what
Hmm.
is Brian Chesky thinking right now? Half the time, these CEOs on the calls are like, "Yeah, we had a great quarter," but you can tell they're like, "Next quarter is gonna suck." They're actually not that
Hmm.
hyped. Brian Chesky is the opposite. He's like, "We're kind of growing slow right now, but believe me, it's gonna pick up. Like, it's gonna."
Yeah.
Like, so those are just the moments where it's like, I think just soak up as much Chesky as you
Hmm.
can, and then read their shareholder letter, and uh, yeah.
Hmm. No, that makes sense. Is there anything about the business and the operations that is a little bit more dry and a little bit more confusing, would you say?
So the biggest confusing thing about Airbnb is that they and I actually fuck with, or sorry, I shouldn't say I like what they're doing right now strategically because they're buying back 1% of
Mhm.
stock per quarter, but they're really only buying back about 0.7 to 0.5% because they're issuing a lot of stock to employees.
Okay.
So the buyback isn't, so it's like 4.3 billion in cash flow. You're like, well, that's way too cheap. Something's wrong with that.
Mhm.
Well, it's like, yeah, like 1.5 billion of that was stock comp. So it's really only
Right,
two and a
okay.
half, 3 billions in like true cash flow, which is still, I think that's, you got to adjust for that.
Mhm.
But I think that's something I would look for in the financials. But I actually, to the point of strategically why I like that is because Brian Chesky, like he's incentivizing his employees with stock. He's
Yeah.
giving them a bunch of stock because to make it go up. And I think that's
Mhm.
really smart. And they have enough, most companies at his stage would be diluting when they do that because they
Mhm.
don't have enough money to do that and they're paying their employees. He's not diluting. He's buying back twice as much stock as he's issuing. So it's going down. But it's important to see that balance of the cash flow is not as strong as it seems because it leaves out
Yeah.
that stock comp. Um,
Yeah. That makes sense. I'll have a look into all this. Have you got another 5, 10 minutes? I'll just ask you a few more thoughts
yeah,
on
sure.
Tesla. Yeah. Sorry, I just want to go back to Tesla because I've now just had a thought based on what you said about Airbnb.
Totally. Yeah.
Um, just quickly, apart from the CEOs, are there any other similarities that you're seeing between these two companies? Apart from them having, these dynamic great CEOs, that aside, is there anything else?
Well, Tesla and Airbnb, and this might sound dumb, but they both need the internet. Like they're both
Mhm.
kind of new versions of old industries that are like hyper changed because of the internet. Like you couldn't have Airbnb without
Yeah.
the internet. Like Tesla sold
Yeah.
cars online. Nobody would have believed the electric car if we didn't have the internet. So,
Mhm.
but that's about where the similarities stop, to be honest. And
Mhm.
I'm a big believer in this, like every company's a Pokemon theory. They all look different. They all have different strengths and weaknesses. Like don't
Yeah.
bucket them the same. And you got to just
Mhm.
analyze what the Pokemon is, what its strengths are, what its weaknesses, what it's good at. And I just think Tesla and Airbnb are wildly different. Airbnb
Mhm.
owns nothing but software and this massive supply and demand network. Airbnb or Tesla is massive physical factories around the world.
Mhm.
And I have
Yeah.
both of them in their own way are incredible assets, but very, very different.
Mhm. So what 2 questions. Firstly, what are the margins like with Airbnb? I'd be interested to hear about that. Do that one
Highest in the
first.
industry, highest in the world.
Okay.
41 cents of every dollar in revenue is profit in the past 12 months.
Interesting.
So
Okay.
that's why Brian Chesky, it's like, oh, Airbnb is sucking. So the first thing he says in the conference call is, we have we COVID hit and we got crushed. We have
Mhm.
the same amount of employees now as we did before COVID, but we have double the revenue. Are
Mhm.
one of the most efficient companies in tech, and that's when we have the most. We're one of the most profitable companies in tech with 41% cash flow margin. Like that's the first thing
Mm.
he says. That's when companies are crushing it. The first thing they tell you is, "We're crushing it. Look how many billions of
Yeah.
profit we made." If they're not telling you that, it's because they didn't actually make that much money, and then they start
Yeah.
giving you other numbers. So that's another good like clue.
Uh-huh. That's interesting. Okay, I remember that. Um, in terms of Tesla, going back to where we began now, is there one thing or one area in particular that you are seeing as the biggest opportunity right now
For Tesla,
for Tesla?
well, I think dropping the price of their cars, if they can come out with a cheaper model, like in between
Mhm.
now and Cybercab, that's
Yeah.
huge.
Mhm. And what do you
Um,
think that would look like?
I don't know. Actually, I'm trying to
It's
figure
hard,
that
isn't
out
it? Yeah.
because I'm like, are they going to launch a Cybercab with a steering wheel? Or are they going to just make the Model 3 and Y cheaper with a new way to build it, but it doesn't really look different?
Mhm.
Hmm. I mean, I actually think one of my sort of underrated caveat or catalyst for Tesla going forward is like the semi truck is starting production next year and the mega
Yeah.
pack are ramping. And I think those
Uh-huh.
are two like really good businesses that have nothing to do with Elon's politics or consumers or
Mhm.
anything that are going to like chug along and start contributing to growth. So I don't know. I'm kind of holding on to Tesla. Like there's too much going on for me to unpack. Like this is why I'm excited. Like I think Optimus is going to be the biggest thing.
Yeah.
So, and that still keeps going ahead.
Longer term. Yeah.
Very, and that was 2027 release when they announced
Mhm.
it in like 2021. And I think it's like ahead of schedule.
Mhm.
So, I don't know. I think Tesla's like they're profitable, their earnings are going to continue to grow without autonomy.
Mhm.
I guess that's what I'm trying to boil it down to. So, I think like in the meantime, while autonomy hits, we're still gonna have earnings and growth, and that's gonna be supporting the stock, and so
Mhm.
I'm feeling really good about holding it here.
Yeah, and I've been noticing that over time, the portion of the revenue coming from car sales alone is decreasing and decreasing and decreasing. And I've never thought that Tesla is as a car company. Like I think that's a ridiculous thing to say. But what that does tell me is that actually they are, and it's always been in the master plans, right? This is something that people often overlook. Elon isn't just reacting and just deciding what to do as in the moment. He's always laid out a plan and he is somewhat sticking to that plan. And I think now is a really interesting point in time in Tesla where they're shifting again. And I guess what I'm trying to ask you here is, are you feeling like right now is a big shift whereby something's really changing? Because you've been around this company for a while, and I guess you've seen it before in the past where you've maybe seen a big jump and you've really seen it changed. And I don't know, does it feel quite full of energy right now to you as it has in the past? Is there something happening there?
Yeah, this is a good question. I feel like there is a new energy. Like
Yeah, me
what
too.
Elon really showed us last night, it's like back to what we were saying, people are disappointed with us. It's not about what you expected or what you wanted,
Yeah.
or people are talking when they should be listening.
Hmm.
Elon Musk and Tesla are telling us the future. Let's just sit back and listen.
Yeah.
And what they told us is they're not going to sell us products, they're going to sell us services. Is kind
Mm,
of the new Tesla I'm seeing.
yeah.
Like they're this new sort of service infrastructure company.
Hmm.
And they're using this, they're so good at building this battery and electric technology that now it's just like leaching into so many more use cases with the Cybercab and with the
Hmm.
Robovan that it's like, whoa. Like if we thought Tesla was making a lot of money with the 3 and Y, just wait till these things start
Yeah.
moving around. They're going to make so, and so you kind of, and what I love about Tesla is it's like art deco. Like they went
Mhm.
inspiring with it. They went beautiful. Like we all feel like we saw the future a little bit,
Yeah.
and they might change it. It might be different, but uh-oh, let me change my camera.
All good. I can still hear you.
I think my fancy camera died.
Mine probably will soon as well.
There we go.
Hey, you're back.
Um, but yeah, so I think he really showed us the future, and um,
You feel like there's more energy now, and we're on the cusp of another era of Tesla almost. That's what it feels like to me.
yeah, we are, and we all know what we're working towards. So I think that's
Mhm.
why it was a cool event. But I think that's a great way to put it. Like it was the start of a new era. It's like the
Mhm.
robotics era, kind of, and yeah, it's just I think it's wild. Like it's wild that the Cybertruck was sort of the start of kind of them breaking out of the mold of like
Yeah.
traditional products.
Uh-huh.
And I just think it's yeah, I'm
Do
very
you
bullish.
Yeah, me too. Clearly we have that in common. Do you see so I'll give you my opinion first and then I'll see what you think about this. In Going back to what a lot of the media says quite often about Tesla and competition, I don't see how any of maybe a couple of them will survive, but in terms of how they'll do, I don't see how any of the legacy automotive companies will be successful enough, quick enough to take any substantial market share away from Tesla. However, I do see that some of the Chinese companies are doing good things. I'm thinking BYD. I still don't think that they're an extremely worrying competitor of Tesla by any means. But what are your thoughts on, let's do EVs in terms of Chinese EVs, and then let's also think about the FSD side of it. Do you see any concern there from the Chinese companies, or for you is that not a thing?
I don't see the Chinese I see the Chinese companies competing with legacy auto companies a lot more and
Okay.
like cheaper EVs. Like Tesla's got
Hmm.
this Apple-esque brand in the space, and then you
Yeah.
compare that with the FSD. I think they're going to be a lot better at FSD than BYD and just
Hmm.
vehicle software in general.
Yeah.
So I think when I think about who's gonna BYD, it's like, yeah, they're growing, they're crushing it. Who's to lose? It's GM, it's Ford, it's Volkswagen, it's Stellantis, it's
Hmm.
all these companies selling gas cars to third world countries like
Yeah.
Brazil, where now everything in Brazil is a BYD. Used to be a GM or Ford or whatever, and now
Hmm.
it's a BYD. And so it's not that's like a international thing that's happening. It's going to continue to. US, depending on what happens with the politics, I think letting China operate a fleet of robo taxis could not really pass. And I
Mhm.
I just personally think comparing the software, Tesla's going to have a multi-year lead on much better software. I see BYD doing cheap bottom of the market electric cars very well. I don't really see them doing robotaxis well, but
Mhm.
they can prove me wrong on that. But I think I the bottom end of the vehicle like you don't it's just tough to be Rivian. It's tough
Yeah,
to be anyone else besides Tesla. That's who I really
it
think
is.
is going to lose with the Chinese boom. And
Yeah.
I don't know. So there's also some geopolitics here where Elon basically set up the first wholly owned automotive factory in China,
Mhm.
and no other auto company could do that. And I think there was sort of like a back of the napkin, back of the table exchange where Tesla gave China a lot of battery and energy technology,
Right.
and
Yeah.
they want to be a powerhouse of the electric vehicle, just like Germany was for the gas vehicle.
Mhm.
And that we're seeing that play out.
Mhm. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I don't I don't see thinking about just the FSD side of it. Wa Waymo, take Waymo. To produce one of their cars in the way that they do, with the route that they've gone down for autonomous driving, to me, that can't scale because the cost of the cars are so extremely high that that cost would have to be passed on to a consumer and the business, and it's just not possible. And then you have a Tesla coming in, and we can, robo taxi. I don't see how, forgetting about Uber for a second, I don't see how anyone competes with that at scale. I don't know how you feel about Waymo. I don't know how you feel about Uber and how that fits into robotaxi fleet. But what do you think about that?
Well, I don't know Waymo's cost exactly, but I did one of their rides in SF. It was a little bit more expensive than Uber, but basically Uber. Um, I've actually become very bullish on Waymo because I think there's
Interesting.
the truth is in the middle. Like, yeah, maybe it's 250 Gs or 300,000 for the car now,
Yeah.
but if they go into mass production, they could probably get it to 100,000 or 70,000 maybe. Sure, the Model 3 costs 25,000, but right now the Waymo is better at autonomously driving than the Tesla. So, I'm actually very bullish on Waymo and think they've
Mhm,
crushed it with their like just have a great service, don't talk about
mhm,
it, don't hype it up, just do it. They have like 100,000 rides a week. So, I think they're crushing it, but I think I think it's more like Tesla and Waymo are the two-headed beast changing everything versus
yeah,
like Tesla versus Waymo. Le-
mhm,
Um, so I'm actually insanely bullish on Waymo. I really think they're crushing it. I have a lot of questions on how Tesla is going to get to where Waymo is because that's what they
mhm,
also said on the call is like 2025 is the first year for California and Texas to like they're going to
mhm,
launch their service, right? So how do they do that? Does that happen? That would be like my biggest question right now.
mhm. And do you think Uber exists in a world where robotaxis scaled?
Maybe because
Yeah,
what Elon said about like managing it like a herd of goats, like you're like a shepherd managing your
yeah,
flock, like that's hella interesting
uh-huh,
because um I think that means he's gonna like let the markets kind of deal with it. You know,
yeah,
like Tesla. I don't know. And I think this is a lot. We've got a lot of questions about this. So I'm waiting to see how they actually roll this out because
mhm,
I don't know. I
yeah.
feel like I could see them being a great, still very relevant kind of you decide where you go. It's all through Uber, or I could see them just getting crushed, right?
Yeah, that's kind of how I see it as well. I think that it's gonna pan out to be one or the other. I think they either make the moves in the direction and stick around and everything that they've built so far will continue, or they maybe are very stubborn about the changes that are coming, and that could lead to a problem. That's my opinion. I don't really see a middle ground here, especially if Tesla can achieve what they're setting out to achieve in terms of how much it will be for the average person to actually and it's so interesting because then you have to ask yourself, is there actually any point in for me? Would there be any point in me buying a car if I can
No.
just literally know? And then what does that mean for the addressable market? It suddenly gets very, very interesting.
And
So
like, what does that mean for the R2 for Rivian?
yeah.
Like, they're
Hmm.
building a car for a world that's not even going to exist.
Yeah. What's
And
the point?
and so, yeah, I think car ownership is totally gonna change. I mean, in New York City, you
Yeah,
don't
me
need a
too.
car. The best part of
Mhm,
living in New York is you don't have a car because you can get anywhere with the trains. If the robotaxi can
mhm.
basically do the, reverse engineered subway system without having to
Yeah.
build it on every city, that's insane, and that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, but then you could get boring company involved with the tunnels.
Totally. And then cars are more like for long trips between cities on highways.
Yeah.
And
Uh-huh.
yeah. And so it's like so that's why it's like these businesses, like you're bullish on Rivian, like you're not thinking through where this is all going.
Yeah, it's very
Like
short term.
nobody wants a $60,000 cute Jeep that doesn't drive
Cute Jeep.
itself. You know, it's like no one
Yeah,
wants that. They want just like, oh, it's $2 on this ride to get from A to B. Bam, I don't have to worry about parking. Fire. Like
yeah. It's gonna change a lot. I think a lot of people are very skeptical in regards to the safety. I think the average person would probably say that, but, that doesn't make sense to me at this point in time because they're gonna prove without a doubt that the data's there to show that the autonomous option is safer than a human driver. And I've been in so many vehicles where I'm thinking, what on earth is this driver doing? It is so dangerous, you know? So they're going to get rid of that.
people want cheap and fun. Have you seen scooters? Those are the least
True.
safe invention of all time, and they're
Yeah.
taken off, and everyone loves them. So, like,
Yeah. I think people always have something to say about Tesla, especially. We're always going to see that. In the time that I've been investing, nothing surprises me now, especially after earnings or an event happens or a product gets released. I can almost predict what the headlines are gonna be at this point, you know? But it's
totally.
more opportunity. So, I realize that we've been speaking for quite a while now, so we'll wrap this up.
Well,
Let
actually,
let
what one
Go on.
final point on that, my mentor told me that Tesla had become the Kim Kardashian of the business world. This is sometimes in 2020 when like
Yeah,
and it was just like, no matter what it is, it's gonna get clicks. And it's
yeah,
like the it thing of like the financial world. And it's been that for 4 years. And it just
uh-huh,
so I just think that's a funny thing whenever I
mhm,
like everything is it's just for clicks. Like the name Tesla gets you clicks. It's it's the
yeah.
coolest kid on the block is Tesla. It has been. So
And that's true, and we saw that. We saw that firsthand with Cybertruck. Like, look how many celebrities wanted to show off their Cybertruck, and
Kim
actually,
Kardashian.
these are the Kardashians included, the Biebers included, you know?
Yeah.
These are celebrities that have way more money than the price point of a Cybertruck. Do you know what I mean? Like, they could be having these and they probably do, the most unique cars out there. Are they showing them off in the photos? No, they're showing their Cybertrucks off. Like, that says a lot.
Like people are still saying the Cybertruck's not cool. It's like Justin Bieber, when's the last time he paid for anything? And he paid 100 grand for this truck because he wants it.
Uh-huh.
Is there anything cooler than the truck that Justin Bieber wants? I mean, like, like sometimes I'm talking to people, I'm like, dude, the Cybertruck's so ugly. I'm like, you saying it's ugly versus Justin Bieber buying it, like, dude,
Yeah.
it's cool. Like, you can't, then it's objectively cool. Like,
I haven't seen one yet either. I really wanna see one.
are you serious? I gotta say, it changes the whole road. It's a whole vibe. It literally is like
I
it's like
imagine.
a omen of good fortune for the day whenever I see one. It's like an inside joke. So,
Yeah, I'm waiting for my day. I'm over here in the UK, so I didn't get to make it to one of their, I don't know what it was called. The road trip that the Cybertruck did. I
oh
didn't
yeah,
get to
yeah.
see it during that, so unfortunately, I haven't seen one yet, but I don't know how it's gonna look over here in the UK. We have such different road structures to you guys. It's gonna look so out of place, but it's gonna turn a lot of heads.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. It feels
Yeah,
like the future. So
I imagine it does, yeah, and is it bigger than I would think it is? Like, when you stand up against it, or not
it's
really?
pretty big, I gotta say. It's like
Yeah,
it's a beast. It's a
a
big
beast of a
beast.
truck.
Yeah, if you're
Uh-huh.
not used to seeing like big American trucks, you're gonna be like,
I'm
damn,
not.
because
Yeah.
it's like a big American truck. So
Mhm. Yeah, that's true. Okay, let's wrap this up with a very general question that hopefully can provide people listening, people watching with some value. You might have more than one answer to this question, but for someone that's just getting started in terms of investing, they're not wanting to maybe have a diversified portfolio. They're wanting to select companies. What would you say is the best thing that they can do? Like, when you look back to what you were doing in the early days, how were you finding those companies like the Teslas, like now the Airbnbs? And what were you doing that sets you maybe apart from other people?
like, well, I read the Warren Buffett book that gets you
Mhm.
start the snowball. That'll get your mind right.
Yeah.
and then, like, invest in the future you believe in. Like, it's hella
Yeah.
corny, but that's been my motto, and it's like, I heard about Tesla, and I was like, "Oh my god, like, I
Mhm.
believe in this. Like, this is gonna be it." And when
Mhm.
you're young, you have an advantage. You know where the world is going. You know what your life is gonna look like. You know what the technologies you want. You know the companies and brands who you're gonna wanna be buying stuff from in 5 years.
Yeah.
Think about those, and
Mhm.
like, you have the like, I feel like this goes over everybody's head, but I'm like, I'm 31. I'm like, I tell my homies, it's like, we could have all been retired right now because
Mhm.
all we had to do was buy, and we just had to be in college and buy the 5 stocks we used every day: Netflix, Starbucks, Amazon,
Yeah.
Tesla, Google,
Apple. Yeah, whatever.
Apple.
Yeah.
They've been like the best stocks. So it's just like you in your like, oh, actually, you know what? I have the best piece of advice people want to get started. It's the Peter Lynch video. Have you seen that video?
Which
Pe
one?
So Peter Lynch, he's like, he does like a 45-minute talk at some
Yeah.
college. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
it is. He managed the Magellan Fund, which was like one of
Uh-huh.
the best performing mutual funds ever for Fidelity. He's kind of like a Warren Buffett-esque in, but he's very a little bit more under the radar. But
Yeah.
that 45-minute speech boils down like how to invest in the stock market from main. Like, he has this joke about how he goes to Dunkin', like, the market's crumbling. He goes out to Dunkin' Donuts. There's still a line. Everyone's still buying donuts. He's like, you know what? I'm buying more Dunkin'
Yeah.
Donut stock. And it's just like, so,
What I'm
yeah,
hearing here is simplify, stick to what you know, and don't listen to the emotions of the market.
exactly. And almost go back at your credit card statements. What
Yeah.
companies have you paid the most money to? Did you like when you paid that money? Did they give you something good that you wanted?
Uh-huh.
Those
Or
are
were you
probably
angry?
really good
Yeah.
investments. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. I like that. I feel like you could answer that question in so many ways, but you've actually given quite tangible I don't wanna use the word advice, but tangible information there. So thank you for
Awesome.
that.
I hope so. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully that helps.
Really interesting. I'll try and for anyone listening, I'll try and find the Peter Lynch video that we've just referenced and put it in the description. Hopefully it's on I think it's on YouTube, quite
Yeah, yeah, it's on
available. So
YouTube. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I'll get hold of that and pop it in there. Cool. On that note, thank you so much for joining. I've really enjoyed this conversation. You've given me a lot to think about, especially when it comes to Airbnb. So expect some questions coming your way about that in the next few weeks, I'm sure. But yeah, appreciate your time again. Thank you so much for joining. Everything where people can find you would be X and YouTube, right? Is there anywhere else?
Yeah, yeah, X and YouTube, and yeah, thanks for having me on the show. Great to scheme, on Tesla,
Always.
Palantir, Airbnb. Yeah, lots of
Uh-huh.
fun. So, good luck.
Cool. Yes. Thank you so much. I'll speak to you soon. Thanks for listening, guys.